We are live, everybody. Welcome. My name is David East. I work at Firebase, like Firebase, all things Firebase. And I am joined today by one of my most knowledgeable Firebase friends, which are you on this? You on this side, right here. Or no, this side. There we go. You can just join by.
Not sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. No, so you just intro yourself.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Jeff. I run the Fireship YouTube channel. So that's where most people know me from. And I think we're going to do some data modeling today. So it should be pretty fun.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. So just to kind of set the mindset for this, Jeff and I have been talking about this idea for a while now. And it's Jeff's idea, where we want to make a JavaScript game, that's a JavaScript Jeopardy game, where you have like a board full of like Jeopardy tiles, and then people can log into the app, and then we sort of act like the Trebek, and we select the questions, and then you all would answer it, and then we would award points. So it's kind of like a mixture between like a quiz app and Jeopardy, but it would be like, we'd run it as a live stream one day if we get this app going, and then everyone joins. We just see who wins. You have a leaderboard and all that stuff. And so it's like a really fun thing to do. And we're just going to get it kicked off by talking about the data model. So if you all have any questions about what we're doing, just, obviously leave it in the comments. And the way we're going to break this whole live stream up is that we're going to be like either focusing totally on the code or the UI or the data structure. And then when it's time to break and go to your questions, we'll scroll up and we'll get to them. So if we're not answering your questions right away, it's because I'm really bad at multitasking. So that's why.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining. But so let's see here. So JavaScript Jeopardy. Jeff, tell me your full vision for it. Like, I kind of gave it up, but like, what? Yeah, you're the one who has the really good thing here.
I'm kind of imagining a game board, and I think maybe we'll do like 9 questions for the first round of it, which will give us a nice 3x3 grid for the UI. So we'll kind of create that Jeopardy grid, and then when we select a question, it'll pop up and activate that question, and then everybody at that point can answer it in real time, and we'll award more points to whoever answers it the fastest. So you get points for answering correctly, but you'll also get points for answering it the fastest. And we'll kind of do a server-side timestamp to validate who submitted the quickest answer.
Yeah, the server-side timestamp sounds like it's gonna be the hardest part.
Yeah, it should be doable. I don't think it'll be too bad, but we'll find a way to make it work. And yeah, at that point, we'll continue doing that for 9 questions, and then we'll aggregate all the scores in the background with cloud functions. And whoever has the highest total score wins the game, and I'll throw in some Fireship swag. And I don't know if Firebase can throw in some swag as well, but there should be some kind of prize for people.
For sure, man. I'll see what I can do. I'm not a swag person. I forgot to wear I do have this though. I wanted to wear this for this stream. Purely vanity at this point. So
nice.
This one right here. So
yeah, I wear that. That looks cool.
I just
have the one yellow Firebase shirt, so I need some more Firebase stuff myself.
Yeah, man, of course you do. I know I said I wasn't gonna read the comments, but I saw this one pop up. How to build a trivia app in 100 seconds by Matt Carson. There
we go.
Let's just put this on 10x, like 100x.
It's deal. Yeah, after we get this done, we should just chop everything up and do 100 second trivia app in Firebase. I think that'd work out pretty well.
Oh, we do have this. I saw this too. What is Jeopardy for non-Americans among us? That's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. So Jeopardy is this like evening time show that comes on in America, probably a lot of places in the world now, but I don't even know when it started, many years ago, and like 60s, 70s, I think. And basically it's like a board of categories, each one of ascending so category questions with ascending dollar amounts, 100, 200, 300, so on and so forth. And then you say, I will take this category for this much. And then they actually give you the answer. And then you have to say what the question would be. And so if it was like if we did a JavaScript Jeopardy one, it would be like this reserved keyword in JavaScript does not have block scoping. You would be like, what is var? And they'd be like, correct. And then you would just move on. So you should check it out. It's like one of the greatest shows of all time. It's seemingly very boring, but somehow, like, once you start watching it, you just can't stop.
Yeah, it's been on forever too. And Alex Trebek who's the host of the show, is kind of an iconic dude who's dealing with pancreatic cancer or some kind of cancer right now.
Yes, yes. Which he's over 1 year out, and Alex Trebek is the man.
Yeah.
If you haven't gotten into Jeopardy, this is like, you should just go YouTube it. You're gonna it's gonna send you through an amazing rabbit hole full of YouTube content.
Yeah, I think they have it on Netflix now, or maybe Hulu.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I did see it on Netflix. I was like, oh man, as soon as I start watching this, I can't stop.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we want to just kind of, since Jeopardy's amazing, we want to recreate that magic. And we're going to kind of go about mocking this up in two different ways right now, at least. Is that I have hidden behind the scenes a sketch window open, and we're just going to start mocking up a UI. And then we're going to start mentally modeling the data based on that UI. So I guess I probably should flip into that. So here's Sketch. For those who don't know what Sketch is, just this nice, like UI mocking app. Very specific. It's kind of like Photoshop, except really specific for apps. And I'm going to make it so I can still see things. And so with Sketch, you have these artboards, and I like to start with like a desktop HD. Even though a lot of times people are going to come in on mobile, I find that I either like to start directly on mobile or directly on HD, because that way it gives you like a good idea of constraints. But this might totally be throwaway.
Yeah, I'll just throw it out there. I think we should maybe do this as a mobile first design, just because I think a lot of people are going to be watching on one screen, and then to answer the quickest, you probably want to have your phone out to like tap in the answer really quick, so you're not switching between tabs.
That's true. All right, we'll go with mobile first. And I like to put the big desktop next to it, regardless of which one I go first on, just to always remind myself of the other screen that I'm going to be responsible for.
Yeah, for sure.
Though ideally, I'd like to get a lot better at Framer. Have you ever used Framer X, which is really cool and advanced? I just haven't taken the full time to do the dive.
Yeah, Framer and Webflow and tools like that are becoming very popular. The, I guess, no-code movement, if you want to call it that.
Well, Framer is like you get the code and the no code. It's because you can write all the React components in it.
Right.
But then also you don't have to. It's kind of like this weird, I want to say weird, this really cool in between.
Yeah.
So we're going to design with gray, because that's easy. And that way we won't be taken up by a color. Let's go with that one. Be like, I don't know what font's even going to pop up right now. Ooh, what is that? That is Monaco. Why is Monaco up, Joe? Monaco is like the last font I would want up. Not the last font, probably Bradley Hand or something like that. Let's go. Actually, one of my favorite fonts is called Upgrade.
Do you have Adobe fonts on here?
I do. I do have both. You can never have too many fonts.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Let's go way smaller. All right. I'm like messing with fonts. 32. All right. Well, this is not great. All right. Anyways, so if you came here on a phone, what I'd probably want to do, I guess I'm trying to think about how we would have them see the board. The board, because I don't want like a micro board, like something where you'd fit all the tiles onto here.
I'm definitely thinking we use CSS Grid for designing the board here, because I envision it as a simple 3x3 grid on most devices, but maybe on smaller devices we could break that down just to either 2 by 4 or whatever. So we could make it responsive in that way with Grid very easily.
Well, I mostly mean like how much am I going to show above the fold? Because what I want to do is, let's go with that. Actually, I don't even want to be in RGB. I want to be in, no, not that. I want to be in.
And I can almost see it being just like 100% viewport width and height, and it just sort of responds with different size boxes. They wouldn't be perfectly square, but you have tiles like that.
So I guess you're thinking I might as well just do it. We would have something like this, where you would have this would be like the category, or are we going to do categories? That's the
yeah. That's actually a good data modeling question, because now at this point we're starting to think about the metadata that goes into a game.
Exactly.
So I think we would have a game document in Firestore that might have like an array of categories. In this case, I think 3 categories would be good.
So if you'd have these categories, so this be a category, it'd be like, how about this? Keywords. And then we would probably have keywords, and then it would be like,
yeah, that would do a big dollar amount. We could, we could weight the different questions based on like how challenging they are, make them, get incrementally more challenging after each one. I mean, assign a higher score to the more challenging ones.
Right. I guess we would need to make these so big, because I think there's like 2 modes to this screen. Whatever, it's not perfectly centered. Yeah, it's really off. There's 2 modes I think that we would care about. Like there's the board mode, and then there's also like the what question is selected mode. Because you would have like, all right, because you have to kind of hide the questions. And so we'd be like, all right, the next one is, oh yeah. And then you'd even have the issue of, I'm probably getting into the weeds here, of like what happens when the question has been answered, or the answer has been questioned. Do you have like some grayed out state like that? No, looks like I lost Jeff and I didn't know it. All right. So I'm reading the questions. All right, so I'm going to take this one over. I'll look at my messages to see where Jeff went. This is a first for me. But so what we are going to do now is we are going to take a look at this. I'm like talking to myself, being like, where's Jeff? All right, so I just saw this one, Steve. That's funny. All right, so put in your questions. Where's Jeff is a good question too. But so what I'm gonna think about is that I'm mostly confounded right now. I'm like really torn about what I want to do with this UI, like, because the Jeopardy board is big. So like the problem I have is that you tend to have these boards that are like, these are all out of whack. The width, that is. I think it's, what is it? I think it's 6 categories. Just go 4 though. Jeopardy has way more categories than this. And then we would have these type of things right here, where it would be like, no, I didn't do this right. It's okay. Things are gonna break. All right. So what we would have is not paragraph. What is it doing? What we would have, sorry, I'm trying to get this text lined up and it is just wants to fight me. I don't know why. Oh, here it is. Okay, that's why. So instead of 32, make this like 28. No, 26. No, 24. Yeah, there we go. I don't really like that, but we'll just go with that for now. And group that so it's easier to copy. So we would have like these type of boards as your traditional Jeopardy board. And so you would have these different categories. So one would be like keywords. The other one would be like, what's a good JavaScript Jeopardy? Scope. I don't know. Let's put this in the middle. What's a good, I know, right? Where is Jeff? But drop in your good categories here. What do you think is a good JavaScript Jeopardy category? I'm going to message Jeff and be like, where'd you go? Maybe he lost the internet. That would be. Let's see here. So keywords, scope. What's another? Keyword, scope, functions. And the functions and scope are pretty similar. And then another one, I probably should be in all caps, and then keywords. Would be, I don't know, operators. So these would all be like these categories. And so you would tend to have these on the grid right here. And this is like a perfect candidate for CSS grid. So then you'd have 200, and let's make the opacity all the way up for that one. And oh, why are you behind? And you would just kind of have this for all of these. So you'd have 200 across the board. And so the question would be kind of hidden behind all these. And then down the screen, you would have it like that. And so it would just kind of keep going on and so forth. Oh, here's Jeff. He's back. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, my internet fully went out. We've been having some weird internet issues here lately. So yeah, sorry about that, everybody.
I think they waited for the live stream to start, and then they were like, and now.
Right.
What I was doing is I was showing the difference between the board and from like a big view versus the board of like the smaller view of like the challenge of displaying it.
Right.
So
yeah, that's basically what I had in mind there, is a bigger grid on desktop, and then I think breaking down to just a single row would be good on mobile.
But how would you, and I have a couple ideas, but I'd be interested to get your concept here. What would you see for when we shorten it, would you see like an overflow X scroll? So we'd have sort of like this whole like hidden area over here of like scroll content, or would it be like each one of these categories becomes single file on like the one vertical scroll?
I would just do a vertical scroll. I usually, like, there's some use cases, but I think horizontal scroll on mobile, it usually doesn't work very well.
Yeah, usually because you'll end up tapping the content.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue. So yeah, I think you just scroll all the way down, or you just go super small with the individual items and make them a grid as well.
All right, let's go with a scroll vertical for now and see maybe what you could do too. Oh, I have an idea. Oh, no, that doesn't work. Or actually, maybe this would work.
Another thing we'll have to fit into the UI somewhere, and maybe this could come out from a drawer or something like that on mobile, is just the high scores and like the actual user management to be able to log in and log out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would definitely have to come from there. But you could have, you could have all the categories. I don't know how I feel about that.
You could make them like an accordion style, I guess. But
kind of, yeah, that's a really good idea. So you could have it be like an accordion style. And so that's actually probably the best now that I think about it. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Because then you would tap on it and then that would show up. And then that way they would be single. You would kind of get the best of both worlds of having them single file and compact.
Yeah, I think that could work.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, because it's really quick. And then we could even do some magic on the Firebase side of things, or for Firestore, and we could sync the point of which, like, we could say we could make these ones interactable, where we can say like, all right, we're going to open up the functions one, and then on everyone's screen, it all opens up.
Right. Yeah, that'd be cool. Well, like when the question actually opens, what my vision is like you have a modal window that pops up that like you can't actually close. So like until you answer the question. So the question pops up, takes up the full screen, and you answer it. And then once you answer it, it's like locked in and goes away.
Let's do that right now. So I like that. So let's do a little bit. Let's create a mask. Oh, what am I doing? Let's create a mask. So this, I should have really grouped these, but I didn't. And so we'll have this mask, and we'll turn up to black. Oh, I have some borders on there I did not want. Let's see here. These should not have borders. It looks weird. There we go.
It's like maybe we should go super retro with it and make it like a 1990s style Jeopardy game.
I was wondering about that. Why are these floated above? Oh, I think it's because I need to do this. That's why. Because yes, there we go. Yeah, I was doing it backwards in my head. All right, so we'd have like this mask that would roll up maybe, and then you would have maybe almost like full screen. We probably wouldn't need a mask then. Actually, let's pull this out then. And it would be like this. Operator allows you to flatten or concat arrays and merge objects together. And I'll change the.
And this actually brings up some interesting data modeling questions as well, because now we have to think about there's going to be one single active question in the database somewhere. So we have to think about how to activate it and deactivate it and kind of manage the state of that question on the server.
Right. And then we need almost like, yeah, and we need something that's like, fills no borders, yes. We need something that's going to be like the timer. And so
yeah,
that's going to be.
Yeah, the timer will be one thing to think about too. And like also this question will have multiple choices, and then only one of those choices will be the correct answer. And we'll have to keep the correct answer in a completely different document because we can't send it down to the client here because someone could technically figure out what that answer is if they know Firebase well enough.
Right.
So
well, mask right. If they know Firebase that well, then I'm almost just like, you win.
Right. But I mean, it wouldn't even be too hard. You could go to the network tab and figure out what, find the request for that document, and within the time frame, I think you could find the right answer and for every single one.
Yeah, no, totally. Sorry, I'm getting really carried away with this. I'll just leave it the way it is. And so this would be like the timer that's like, starting to time around. It's a weird thing. But so we'd have like the timer, and then probably in the middle, there'd be like they'd be like, oh, there's 45 seconds left.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool to like count down the score. Like say you get 1,000 points if you answer immediately, and then that kind of ticks away over the course of 60 seconds. So you can kind of see your score diminishing as time goes by. Oh
yeah, that's a great.
Kind of put some pressure on to get an answer in quickly.
Yeah, because you could also, so this operator allows you to do this together, and then you would have like, you'd kind of have like your leaderboard section down here of like maybe people who have answered.
Yeah, somewhere. I don't know if you'd be able to do it on this screen per se. Like there definitely should be a leaderboard that's always visible, so the people winning the game kind of get recognition in the app itself.
Right. We need answers because we can't just speak it, even though that would be cool.
And this is a good data modeling topic too, because we have this question here. So like if you think of this question as a single document, you have the question text, And then you probably have an array or a map of at least 3 different multiple choice answers.
Right.
And then yeah.
Here,
but
yeah, you're right. So let's do it like you have like really stick standard with my colors, but I'm not going to. So you'd have like, all right, oh no, that's too much. Group this. So yeah, so that way this would be, would you see this, actually here's a good question. I guess we start talking about data modeling. Would you see this as one document or multiple documents?
I would say this is one document. So I would have like individual questions that I would break the questions down into their own collection and then have a game sort of link to the IDs of the questions that are part of that specific game. You could kind of embed everything together. But I don't know, that's my initial thought, is breaking questions down into their own individual documents. Because for each question, we're going to have a response from every single user, which will also be its own document. So that'll be, I would envision that being nested in a sub-collection under each individual question. So like, there's a few ways you could do it, but you could have a game document that has a sub-collection of questions, and then each question has a sub-collection of responses. So you kind of have a hierarchy of 3, basically, yeah, a hierarchy of three levels: a game, a question, and a response.
Game question. All right, so all right, before I get too carried away here with the UI, because that's all I want to do, is let me just do another rectangle here, and let's make this like the data structure. So you imagine so we'd have like,
well, one thing you could, do you want to pull up Firestore? Like if you have an empty project or something, we could
all right, fine,
kind of sketch it out in there.
All right, let's do it that way. I should get out of Sketch. By the way, who wants to guess what I'm drinking? I do that every stream now. So what is in this cup? All right, so let me share my other screen. And application window, Firebase console. And here's a fresh new project. Continue. Jeopardy JS. I'm very excited about that one. All right, so let's initialize Firestore since this is brand new. It's like the smell of a new car. New project full of potential. And start in test mode.
I like how in Firestore they'll now disable your database after 30 days if you keep it in test mode without updating your rules. Which
yeah, nice. I get lots of emails about that all the time since I create so many projects. They're like, this client access to your database is expiring.
Yeah, yeah, same here.
10 times it hurts me because I'm like, it's fine. And then I'm like, how did that thing stop working?
Yeah.
Let's see here. While this is going up, let's go through some of these questions. Oh, we got a winner. Georgie. Coffee. It is. It's just coffee. You went with the obvious one. Gary, your commitment to matcha is admirable. I don't have any, but I like how you always guess it. And Paul Winder, sorry, not milk. No, milk is good. Let's see here. I'm going back up. Reading some of these things. When it comes to Firestore DB modeling, you basically want to model the DB upon the UI to optimize reads instead of actually making sense when you look at it. Well, it depends on what making sense means. But why is this still spinning? Maybe, there we go. I just needed to make the screen active. So one of the questions was, do you want to model the UI, the DB after the UI? And it depends on your system. There are some systems where that doesn't matter. I've created a lot of like data pipelines through Firestore, like where I like pull data from different APIs and stuff like that. And a lot of the data is actually stored more so in a normalized fashion, but then I will run like scheduled functions, intervals throughout the day or just once a day that will take that normalized data and then merge it into like something that's more like a logical view or something like that in the SQL world.
Yeah, I think the optimal thing you want is the optimal way to do it is if you can create a document that has all of your data for a specific screen or page in the application. That's the ideal way for things to go. But a lot of times people have relational data that just doesn't quite work like that. Like you just have queries and things you have to make.
Right. You want to optimize for the most simple reads, and you can look at your hierarchy in Firestore like it's a SQL statement. So like if you have select star from users where UID is equal to 1 would be about the same as saying users/1. And then it's the same statement. There's just no query. And then when there's no query, there's no logic. It's just like knowing exactly where it is in the database. So it's the same concepts that you would have in the SQL world, just structured differently. Okay, let's pull this up. So what collection do you want to start with?
Let's start with the game, since that'll be the top level collection.
All right, so you want this you're being really fancy here. I wasn't even thinking about being this fancy, but I like it. You want to say like a game is like one session. And so like if you did this daily, you would, so this is like multi-tenant in the sense of games. It's not just to
yeah, I'm sure I want to make this app scale. So
yeah,
we'll make games its own collection. That way we can play multiple games if we want to. It would be a little more simple to just forget the game's document and just like hard code all the data directly into our front end app. So maybe that's a better choice in this case, but I think,
or you just wipe out.
Realistically, if you're building an app, you probably want a games collection.
No, you totally do. All right, so we have games, and so what's with games? Is that sort of like a placeholder? Like, what's the document level? Is it just going to contain like metadata about the game, like the name of the game?
Yeah, stuff like that. The categories would be one main thing to put here. So I'd make that an array of just an array of string values should be fine.
It sounds good. So it'd just be like functions, operators, potables.
Oh,
if anyone watches Jeopardy.
So one other thing we should definitely do here is aggregate the high scores, like the running high score for whoever's winning the game. I think putting that data here on the game document would make the most sense.
So it'd be like you'd have like the leaderboard here.
Yeah, just embed the leaderboard in here.
And have that as an array?
Yeah, probably an array of maps. So each map has the username and then the high score for that user.
You can't do, can you do array map? Okay, you can do array map now. And for the longest time, we didn't have that in there because it was very complicated. But I think they've fixed that since then. Okay, so that would be like, would the field be like a user ID and the score?
I would say I would do the user's display name here, but you probably want the user ID as well, because basically with this, you want to just be able to take this data and show it in the UI. Because what we're doing here is duplicating data instead of like making a query for it. So we'll have a cloud function, figure out the high scores in the background, and then we'll duplicate that data here so it's read very quickly and in real time for everybody.
I see. You could get really crazy here. I don't know if this is a smart idea. Reel me in if this isn't good. But what if you had a map of maps and you would have UID, and then you would have the UID as one of the keys, and then you would have the display name as one, and then the score as the other. So it'd be like 747. Why not?
That could work as well.
But if it's a map, though, it will be a little more difficult to sort the map.
Yeah, I could see some issues like just kind of wrangling that data on the back end because basically after every every round we're going to have to recalculate the high scores. And we'll have to do that in the background somewhere. And an array would be probably the simplest way to go, but
so the arrays is good when we'd have to do any sorting or aggregating. The object is good when we'd want to be doing, like when the key value has like importance, when we're doing like lookup of the user by their UID.
Right.
And I don't see any lookup, at least off the top of my head. So let's just keep it as a map right now, but maybe,
yeah, I could see it should work fine, actually.
Yeah. Maybe in the future, I'd want to make it an array. We'll just keep this. I don't think it's that big of a deal because you can always just like object.keys, and as long as there's not like 10,000 users in it, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Basically, we'll just grab the leaderboard, look at that map, and I don't know if Firestore keeps the map keys sorted.
I believe it would be likely actually, I don't know if this is real-time database or Firestore mixed up. I believe it might be lexicographically, so kind of alphabetical order. Okay. Basically like your folder order of like when you create new folders and like on your desktop.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not based on when they're inserted.
We're gonna see.
Yeah, that would make more sense. Yeah.
I'm just saving this before I lose all that. Like accidentally refresh. Okay, so we have categories and we have the leaderboard and then the name. So that makes sense because that all can be led on one UI. There could be some contention though with this document with updating the score. How frequent do you see this leaderboard being updated?
So this will only be updated once every question. So there should be a single cloud function that listens for when the question state becomes finalized. Okay. And then at that point, it pulls everything, calculates the score, and then updates the leaderboard.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah. So I don't see it as being a high frequency write or anything like that.
So this is actually one of the most, what we just both discussed here, just for the audience, is one of the most important things to think about when you're structuring your data, really for any type of system. But just thinking about for Firestore's sakes, we're asking ourselves, how often are the writes going to happen to this document? So like, how often are we going to update it? And the reason why this kind of stuck out for me is because the score right here is something that what is the frequency of this is going to be updated? And so Jeff has a really nice system where he's saying at the end of every question, we're just going to have one update. It's going to be like it's that updates this whole thing, all the user scores every round. And that is a really nice way of doing it because it limits your writes to just one. And that keeps you from having like race conditions, from trying to multiple people like slamming up against this doc. And that can create problems at times. You can obviously create lots of, you can code against that, but that's just more work. Another way of doing it, if it was going to be updated frequently, would be moving leaderboard probably to like a sub collection, and then each one of these would be a document of the sub collection. If we were going to update everything so frequently,
right?
Yeah, but
because there's a limit in Firestore for one write per second, but you can burst above that limit, so you don't need to do sharding or anything crazy if you just need to burst above it temporarily,
right?
But if you have something that's super high frequency, like a Twitter post that's being liked like 1,000 times a second, right? And you need to shard the database. And there's a Firebase extension that can kind of handle that for you automatically.
Exactly. Yeah, the distributed counter. Yeah, no, that's perfectly said. So it's just one of those, since part of the lesson here is thinking about data structuring, is that a lot of people ask, like, when should something be an array in a document, and when should something be like a sub collection of that document? And this is exactly this is one of the ways of doing of the ways you decide that, is how often are we going to update this leaderboard? And Jeff has the system where at the end of every question, one cloud function will run and just do that management. And so it's one update. And so that's and it sort of batches that into one write, and that will make costs a lot cheaper, and it will also make just the update way more efficient. So yeah, that is why this is in leaderboard. So we have leaderboard name. There's probably other metadata that we would eventually need to add for this, but let's not worry about that now. So with games, do you imagine there would be a sub collection of questions?
Now, that's kind of an interesting question because we could make questions a root collection, or if we want to, we could tightly couple them to games and just make them all those questions owned by an individual game. The advantage of a root collection I could see would be if you have multiple games and you want to use the same question in a future game.
Right.
I don't think we're going to be doing that, so I'm more inclined to think just putting this in a subcollection for this particular app.
Now, my question for you is, and this is just like a general question because I think either is fine. Why questions as a subcollection? Oh, I know why, because you already said this earlier. You would have questions as a subcollection, not as a field, because of the security model, right?
Not just that, but also figuring out, like, managing all the responses for an individual question. Because once we have a question, then we have to think about how users respond to that question, which I think is probably going to be another subcollection of that.
Because then now, so that's a really interesting way of putting it. So let's create that so we can talk to it more. So we'd have a subcollection, and the reason why we have it as a subcollection is that way it's basically like it's implicitly writing a query to get to this questions. So if this is our ID for our game and we're saying game / this is the same in SQL as saying select star from questions where games or game ID, I'm doing all in caps, equal this ID. And that's the same thing, except no query involved. So it's the same concept. So if you're from the SQL world, you're like, oh, where can I write my select statement? This is it. Your structuring is your select statement.
If you're a Firestore no SQL user, you might be wondering why not to make it a root collection.
Mm-hmm.
Some advantages of a subcollection are that for one, like David said, the query is simplified, and it also reduces the amount of data that you need to save in the document, because we'd have to save a game ID on every single question if it were in the root. And we'd also have to most likely create an index if we wanted to query by multiple parameters on those questions. So it just provides kind of simplicity across the board.
Yes, and if you do want to do queries across subcollections, you can do that with collection group queries.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's kind of been a game changer for data modeling in Firestore.
Absolutely. Though it's fortunately for us in this instance, that's like way overkill because it's unlikely we would need to query across questions for too many reasons.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have questions and then we have this document ID. And so the question would have, like, let's just say the question title, and it would be, what did I do for that one? Just copy the text. All right. And so that's the title. I'm just going to save it there for now, just to operate in the data view. Let's see. All right, so this operator allows you to categorize, merge objects together. All right, so what else do you see, Jeff, living in this questions document?
The next thing we need is some options for the question itself, options the user can select. So again, I'd probably make that a map, I guess. It could be a map.
Yeah, it doesn't. Let's just make it a map because I already selected map. So, would you?
So I would give the key will be the ID for the option. So each option should have a unique ID.
Okay.
That can just be whatever, but
I would fix that. I would write, normally to make this unique, I would actually write a script that could do this, that populate this, or I'd create like some admin UI and that would do the client generated unique keys. So the value would be like, what is the spread operator? Would be like one of them.
I think we're actually gonna have to make this a map of a map.
Maps.
Yeah, because we'll need the question text. Actually, I'm trying to think if there's additional data that we're going to need beyond the question text, but now that I think about it, I actually don't think we really need anything else.
Okay.
Because value of the map key.
Yeah, I was wondering about that myself, because we don't want to embed, for security purposes, we don't want to embed like correct. Is correct true?
Right. Yeah, because you would think we have an option on there that says correct, true, or false, but we're not going to want that on this particular document because it would have to be delivered client side and someone could potentially read that from the network.
Yes. All right, I'm just going to put 2 options in to be lazy. All right, so we have these 2 options right here. Oh, interesting. Yeah, see, there's the sort right there was because B before K.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if we'd want actual order, then we would probably have to use an array, which I don't think is all that.
The only thing we need is the key, I think, to tell us which answer is correct, which we'll put in a separate document.
So this is mostly what we need for the view, but what would we do to keep the security model good so, you know, no savvy Firebase user would know how to sniff out the answer?
Well, before we go into that, there's one other thing we should have on this document is the actual state of the question. Because remember, a question will be activated for 60 seconds.
That's right.
So we need to have an initial state, like an active state, and then some kind of finalized or complete state.
Okay, so question state, we'll just say, so there's, finalized. I see what you're saying, because there's like inactive, like the question has not been answered. Right. So basically unanswered.
Yeah.
Active, answered. Like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that looks good.
So let's just do unanswered.
And there might be like one other state while the scores are being finalized in the background. It's probably unnecessary, but
no, that's that's good because that just gives you more information in the UI to be like, you know, processing. I guess it'd be like processing, yeah.
Right. One thing that would be really cool in Firestore is if you could create like a type like that where you have, you know, options that you could then like somehow use in the front end UI. But
it'd be basically like an enum type of like you would have like strong typing. You basically like your own custom enum of those things, and that way, yeah. No, I see what you're saying. That would be very, very cool.
Basically, yeah, you can't put the question in the wrong state and have your entire app break.
Right. Yeah, you would have. It would basically be like a reference type, but with more, but just be way more tailored to your need.
Right. It's like something you can do in GraphQL because it's the schema's strong type, so you can kind of do things like that in GraphQL. But
yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so we have state, options, title. Would we have something like you're saying? Would it be like a start time for like the question?
I don't know. I think that might almost be better on the game document because
that's what I was wondering.
The game document could have a list of the questions that actually, well, because we made this a subcollection, so actually that's not really necessary. I don't know. There probably should be some sort of timestamp on this document.
Yeah, we'll just put timestamp just for now. And timestamp though would exist though if timestamp though would exist when the question was beginning to be answered.
You could have multiple timestamps here, like created at, started at, finished at. A lot of times if I need to manage, like if I want to know the actual time the state changed, then I'll just put multiple timestamps like that.
Right. All right. We'll just start with started at for now.
Yeah, I think that's good for now. We can kind of build on that once we get to the UI and figure out what we actually need.
Exactly.
And that's the great thing about NoSQL is you have the flexibility early on to just kind of prototype and iterate until you actually know exactly what schema you need. Right,
exactly. And then we can lock down the exact schema we need with rules later.
Right.
Okay, cool. So what do you want to get into next? Do you want to get into the server syncing of the timestamp, or do you want to talk about the security model of not having the game being the answer of the question being visible?
Yeah, let's take care of the answers, I think.
Okay.
But I think that'd be the next logical thing.
Sounds good.
Or actually, the other thing we need to think about is the responses from the user.
Oh yeah, that's actually, yes. Actually, I agree with that. Yeah. So what is a good response? Or what would you have that be? Would that be like a subcollection? I
would probably go, yeah, because a response is tied to a question. So I I would do it as a sub collection here.
Yeah, I was just thinking. Oh, then we might need to do a collection group query. I don't know. Let's see. So collection ID. This would be responses, I imagine.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And then a response. Would you? Oh, this is an interesting question. Would you have the response be a unique generated ID, or would you have it be the user's ID?
I would have it be the user's ID in this case, because a user can only have one response. So when you have one of something owned by a user, I would make it a user ID for the document ID.
And this is another one of those like cool Firestore modeling tricks to know. When you call it a trick, it's like an actual technique, is that in any case where like you want a unique, like a distinct key, like in SQL, you can use some type of ID that's guaranteed, that's distinct to a user or distinct to some property. And in this case, when the most common technique is users. So by making a document ID or a collection ID or something like that as the user's ID, that way when we write to that, we can actually check to see if they're trying to submit multiple responses. And then you can write a security rule that says, hey, if data already exists at this spot, then reject it, because we're not going to allow you to answer twice. Or maybe we do want you to answer twice because we allow you to change your answer before time locks in or something like that. But then that way we know exactly where to update, and we're not like searching the list of unique IDs for which one's yours.
Right. Yeah, so, I think that's perfect. That'll set us up for a rule that only allows users to create data and not update or delete data after it's been submitted.
Exactly. And so what fields do you imagine here? Like the answer, and would that be like the key of the answer?
Yeah, so that should be a key of they'll get that key from the front end code, and that'll be one of those keys from the map in the question document.
And that seems like that's probably the only thing that we need to record. Maybe some timestamps, but.
We also want, maybe a timestamp, but we'll also want the score because we'll be calculating a time-based score here as well.
Oh, good call. I didn't think about that. Yeah. So you would have answered at timestamp.
Yeah, and that'll be a server timestamp using the Firebase SDK. And then we can take that timestamp and validate it on the back end or calculate the actual score all on the server. So it's not based on the user's client-side clock or anything.
Is the score the user's current score, or is that like the score they got answering?
The score would be set on the back end somehow. Like,
that's what I thought, yeah.
Okay. Like they'll create the initial document, and then we'll use Firebase admin on a cloud function to then calculate the score and update that. So there'll be like a pending state while the score is being calculated.
So we don't need a score here then?
No, like we can set one there because the score will be just for like modeling purposes. There'll be a score set there eventually, but it won't be set by the user.
Okay, just for mental purposes, I'll put that in there. Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. So that right there makes sense. And so now we have the response, and then we'd have multiple ones per UID. And then this is where we would set a cloud function to listen to this creation state, and then to be able to aggregate to the leaderboard all the way back in the root document.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I'm not sure. Like we'll have to kind of go through that and figure out. That'll be for a future video, but we'll go through and figure out how to do all that data aggregation.
Yes. Let me look at I guess we could look at some of the questions. What would you want to do? You want to look at the questions, or do you want to? What's like a good? What do you think is a good stopping point here?
Well, let's go ahead and set up the answer. I think that's the last.
Yeah.
We'll also want a collection for users, but that can be something very simple.
Yeah. Okay. So where do you imagine answers would be? Is answers going to be a sub collection of questions, like answer?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it'd probably make the most sense to just have that side by side, and we'll give Yellow responses collection and a answers collection that have the same matching document ID. So that way, when we're analyzing a question, we can just pull the same document ID under the answers collection to get the answer for that in the back end.
I see. So let's say it's this one. It's what is the spread operators, the key. So you would have it like this, and maybe I'm not following you, right? But so like the collection ID for question / this answers, this is the correct answer in this case. Would that contain whether it's true or not?
Yeah, it would just contain the key that's correct. So I would just have like one field on there that says correct answer. And
okay, actually, wait. Would you put that on the question, or would you put that on the would you put that on the game?
I would put it on a subcollection under questions. So you see, you have your responses. Or no, not there. Now I'm getting confused.
It's okay. It's data.
So we have question. Yeah. So I would put it, under games, we'd have questions and then answers.
Yes. Okay. That's what I was thinking too.
Question ID and the answer ID would be the same.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing too. Okay. Yeah. Because then basically what you're saying is that you could do it that way under questions. It would be more complicated, but possible. But here you're just creating one big map of, this is assuming that every question has a unique ID. And that way you can have this giant map of ID and true. Basically, right? Or ID, and you can't just have this isn't real-time database, you need an object. So it'd be like ID and is correct or something like that.
Yeah, I think you'd only need the question, and then you map the question ID to the answer ID. So they share the same ID.
Oh,
and then you can just pull that, and that'll have the key of the correct option.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see what you're saying. So okay.
So that way, as you're in the back end, you'll calculate all your scores. You'll pull that answer document. So you just keep that, sitting there in memory. And then you can go through each of the user's responses and see if they selected the correct answer.
So I think that's like different names for the same thing, because either way, it's just literally different names for the same thing, or it's different techniques that'll achieve the exact same thing. And I think they're both the same performance. It's just interesting to call this out, is that my idea is that answers would just be literally if we can guarantee, which we can, that every answer has unique or every option, answer option has a unique identifier, then we can just map whether it's correct or not. And that way you would just do a quick lookup, but it's the same thing in your case if you go to questions or answers by the question ID and just get the one back. What's the right one? Like, it's the same.
Right.
Yeah. It's just interesting. So basically the lesson there is when you get in those type of situations where you're like, which one's better? In that kind of case, it's achieving the exact same thing by a lookup each time.
Right. There's a lot of trade-offs and a lot of ways you can solve the same problem using multiple techniques, and it usually just kind of boils down to the trade-offs between them.
Right, and just funny enough, this one has the same exact trade-off. Like, it's just a
right. Yeah, there's not much of a difference.
Yeah, so it's just it doesn't matter. I mean, you could eventually migrate to the other data structure if you find there's some big performance gain. Or usually it's not going to end up being, you'd need crazy amounts of data and a lot of traffic at one location to start seeing gains like that.
Right.
All right, make sure I copied this. Come on. I know that we have these locked down. Actually, what is it? AR. Yes, it's this one. All right, I just copy it in the bar. All right, so now start collection. A collection ID is going to be answers. And so for this question ID, we would have a field that would just be correct answer. And it would be the key of the correct answer, right?
Right, yeah.
I don't remember what the key is, so I'll just write correct key. So that way now so this right here would only be accessed by the admin SDK and the Cloud Function.
Right.
So that way, when we run this, that it's able to be like, oh, we answered that question. Let's go look it up. Let's go apply that. And then it can run through the user's answers, the responses, that is. And so questions. So it's going to go through all of these responses, look at their answer, so whatever the key is, and then it's going to be able to look that up and be like, okay, this was the correct one. Did you get it correct? Yes, you did. Congratulations. You answered it at this time. The start time was this. So that gives you a score of here. And then we'd write that score in.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's what I had in mind.
All right, sweet. We are on the same exact page. So yeah, that sounds like that whole system will work really well in a real time, in a very heavy race condition fearing world, because you have distributed the things out that could be contentious and you are aggregating them by one responsible, security given client, that being the cloud function. Right.
Yeah, I think we've kind of minimized the reads by aggregating the leaderboard and things like that. We don't need any massive queries on the client side. And then we're doing all of our, calculations and writes with just a single cloud function call. So that'll keep things nice and efficient.
What's interesting is actually, I really liked how you brought up the client side query part. That is a very easy way of, when you're first starting out, to kind of prototype your app up without throwing up a cloud function, is that you're saying like, oh, let me just run getting the data on the client. That starts to break down as the security model grows more complex, just like we have for the answer here. You wouldn't query what the answer is on the client, because then the client would have access to the answer. So then we would need some type of server component, but since you're already running a server component, you might as well enforce all the rights at once with the cloud function. And cloud functions are cheap because you get like 2 million invocations for free a month. And so if you're only running one cloud function per answer, and we're running 10 questions in this game, that's going to be free. And you're not going to be hammering, not everyone's going to be pulling down every doc or writing or fanning out on the client to all these docs or stuff. So you're really aggregating, or you're consolidating your reads and your writes. So you're reducing the amount of reads and writes, therefore reducing the amount of cost that you would see from Firestore. All this, though, would be within the free tier, so we're just projecting lots of traffic. But the cloud function would still just be once, even if there was a lot of traffic.
Right. So yeah, I made a video probably about a year ago about how to not get a $30,000 Firebase bill.
Great video.
And that's basically related to this. If we were to, instead of managing all the responses on the back end, we could just query every single response for every single user and calculate them. But then we'd have, an exponential number of reads on the client side, which would obviously cost us a lot more money.
Yes. Yeah, I like this architecture a lot, because not only is it performance-wise doing the correct things, but it's also in line with cost as well. So as traffic scales up, the cost will not exponentially scale up as well, because it's still one cloud function that runs per question.
Right. Yeah, I would say each client is probably going to execute maybe 20 to 50 document reads throughout the course of the game, maybe something like that. And then, a handful of writes on the back end, which, for a big game is not very much, considering how many Firestore reads you get at a low price and all that.
Exactly. So this is really good, because you're not leaning heavily on one metric that could push costs. You sort of distribute out where you're relying on. So, and the cloud function in a way is basically like a cache in front of your Firestore reads and writes.
Right.
Yeah.
The goal is just to not end up with a situation where you're executing exponential reads as your data grows.
Exactly. So exactly. It's the exponential stopper. I don't know. There's probably a good word for
it's kind of like big O notation with algorithms. You have to kind of think about how your reads are going to scale up based on how, they're looking right now.
Yeah, which is exactly if you ever are building an app on Firestore, Firebase in general, and you're worried at launch what's going to happen. What if I get put on the top of some Reddit subreddit or people retweet like crazy and everyone goes to it, and you're worried about the cost. Free tier is really big, but on top of that, this is the same, the way that Jeff and I have talked about it is the way you look at it. Like, where would all of those, where are all my writes, where are all my reads, how, like, you know, how many times would the cloud function be triggering? And you look at all of those instances and you look to see where, if you're going to be reading a ton of data or writing a ton of data from the client, where could I batch that up? And a cloud function is usually the most practical place to do that.
Right. Yeah. I usually tell people to try and calculate just the number of reads and writes that a single user has throughout the course of the app, just kind of average that out, and then just multiply it by, you know, however many users you expect to grow to. So,
yes,
you know, that hopefully that number is just linear. Like, so if you have 10 reads and then you have 1,000 users, you have 10,000 reads. But if that, you know, if that number goes up to 100,000, then you probably have some kind of issue somewhere with the way things are set up.
Right. So, all right, let's see. I think that was a really good modeling. I think we can probably get into, I know that you have that boilerplate. We're going to do this whole thing in Svelte, by the way, which I'm super excited about. And so that'll probably be next episode. We'll probably start reading this data and start creating some mock UI for it.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good next step. We'll get the UI going and all that stuff. And then maybe after that, finalize everything with the backend data aggregation.
And just real quick before we go, I'm going to go through some of the questions or comments. Gary says he's going to send me matcha tea. Gary, you send me some matcha tea, I'll drink it. Let's see here. Web Developer TV says hello to you.
Oh, hey there, Web Developer TV.
Ben says, do you name your collections plural, games or game? What is your best practice?
I like the plural convention. That's kind of how most frameworks, when they have like collections of data, it should be plural. It's kind of convention over configuration, just so it's predictable. Agreed.
Matt Carson asks, can you query the by the ID of a map in an array? And
yep.
Wait, are you talking about straight to a field?
I think so. Like, you can do the dot notation if you have.
Oh, yes, you're right. I forgot about that. That's been like a forever feature. I haven't used that in a long time. That was like a day one feature. I forgot about that. Yes, I remember seeing that and being mind blown. I've just never had to use it. But I
use it quite a bit. I have a Geo library, and it uses that pretty heavily to.
Oh yeah, for sure. Work. That's a very good point. Anything with because latitude, longitude, all that meta. Let's see. When I plan on denormalizing data, I do something like user ID X, then add items to that map, display name. Oh, and maybe he's commenting to that. I thought that was going to be a question, but yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Cedric liked the SQL translation. I think that helped me out a lot when I first, because I came from a very heavy SQL background. I basically got my degree in SQL databases, which is funny because I'm like, I can't remember the last time I've really created like a big heavy SQL thing, but my whole undergrad, and I say undergrad like I did an overgrad or postgrad. I only did an undergrad. And my college time and my early career was all SQL. Firebase was the first NoSQL database I ever used. Is there a library equivalent that could convert SQL statements to Firestore equivalent? There actually is. It's called FireSQL. It's a JavaScript library. It's written by Joseph Sale, and it is really good. It basically has this little client-side AST that will translate that into Firestore statements. And it's really cool. You should check it out. It's the NPM package is named FireSQL. Jeff, Firebase admin does not cache documents in memory, right?
Yeah, that's right. If you have like multiple like Cloud Function invocations, they won't be cache in memory as far as I know.
Right. I don't think the admin does the same caching as the client SDK does, but even if it did, it would just get wiped out once the function ran out. So you can't really rely on that.
Yeah, like under the hood, you can think of your function as a container that gets spun up based on the amount of demand. So if you have a function that's being hit all the time, it should stay spun up, and then it'll scale additional containers as needed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but like in our case, we're just reading one single document in the Cloud Function, and then we'll calculate all the scores with just that one single document read.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess.
Yeah. We're not relying on the caching in this case. Kevin asked, any good method, tool, best practice to document your Firestore schema before you start your actual implementation? I actually have, there's multiple ways of doing this. I like to start out by, pull this different view. I like to start out by really, you could just do it markdown to start out with, just to really kind of like get those thoughts out of your brain and onto paper so very quickly. And then from there, you can sometimes I actually go into Sketch and I draw the schema, like a little doc that'll have like / this / that to those parts of the UI. And then really, if you really want things like hardcore documented, then some of the best types of documentation are the rules and the tests. So if you start writing your rules out, that will serve as schema. So you don't even have to worry about read and write validations at first. You can just worry about the actual shape validations of the security rules to make sure that it contains all the properties you expect. Those tend to be just little functions. Mike McDonald years ago did a really good video on that for role-based systems. Jeff, I'm sure you have like 16 different videos that do that as well.
Yeah. One thing I'll add to that is that for most of my projects, I'm using TypeScript. And for data modeling, one thing I like to do is just start directly with interfaces and kind of build out those interfaces. And that's another way you can potentially model your data.
We have this tool that'll actually take your interfaces, TypeScript interfaces, and turn them into your validation functions. But I think it requires like some binary or some runtime that's not friendly for most computers. I can't remember what it is. So it's like
something you guys use internally?
No, it's just like, I think it's like you need I can't remember what it is now. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but I don't know one engineer internally was working on it. It was open source. It's like out there somewhere. But I don't think it ever got finished, but it was a really cool idea to be like, yeah, just give me your TypeScript types. And then it's only for validations, but it will create all your function validations and keep them kind of in sync with your code. Dust off. And then lastly, too, you can use the emulator, Kevin, to write unit tests, to spin up the emulator and then write just like you would write like a Jasmine or Mocha test and be like, here's an object. I expect this to pass. I expect this to fail. And then just expect this, that. And then that's a really nice way of documenting and making sure all your schema stuff is lights out correct.
Yeah. I would say that's the best way to do it in production when your rules really matter. So you don't have any regressions that lead to security leaks, which is especially important as your app grows.
Yes, couldn't agree more. David says that he just uses a Google Doc, which is the best way to really get started on anything. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I use Google Docs for tons of things, like notes for all my videos that I make. I usually start with a Google Doc and sketch out an outline, and I just keep a ton of stuff in there.
Yeah. Nice to see you too. Thank you for stopping by. And Cedric, we don't know when the next session's planned, but this was fun. So we'll do it sometime. So we try to be organized beforehand. Try is a very key word there, but we're going to have to figure out how we want to move forward with the UI. We're learning each and every time. So, and Andres, thank you. Thank you for stopping by. I always love seeing you.
Thanks.
And so, yeah, thanks for stopping by. This is, we're just kind of exploring this. We really want to run this as a live stream eventually. We think this would just be super fun to get everyone together and try to find some esoteric. We could go through JavaScript what and then just see, and those could be some, that would be a great category, JavaScript what, or what being the category. And it'd be like array plus array equals.
Right. Yeah, that'd be good. Or like in Jeopardy, popular categories before and after. So we could use some like weird JavaScript mutation methods and be like, first you have this before you do array slice. Now what happens to it afterwards?
Oh, yeah. It would be like 1% gets it right.
I know, probably.
And let's see here.
Or also JavaScript history too, going back to like Netscape and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. How many, like this many days it took to build JavaScript.
Because I made a whole video on that, which I think it was like 14 days. Brendan Ike made it for Netscape.
Momo wants to know if you could share how you make your videos.
I get that question a lot, and I made a live stream about that probably over a year ago at this point, but it's on my list. I'd like to make a video for that in the future.
Yeah, you do. Your stuff is good.
Yeah, thanks.
And Lavi asks, any special reason for choosing Svelte? I'll let Jeff. Jeff's the one who was like, we should use Svelte. I didn't say no or argue. I agreed, but you can go forth and tell them Svelte.
I think this is a really good use case for Svelte because it's a single page application without any routing or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wrote a package called Svelte Fire that takes basically your Firestore and Firebase data and puts it into Svelte components that you can easily just prototype with in the UI. And I think it'll be a perfect use case for this particular app.
Yeah, we don't care about SEO. We don't care, like none of this is going to be static outside of maybe some app shell stuff we might do. So this is very appy app world of web. I always like to think of like the archetypes of web development. Jason Miller once did a really good blog post and like tweet series about this, of like archetypes of apps versus like the architecture you should use. Love that one. But yeah, in this case, this is so appy that we don't have to worry about like, is it going to get indexed? What static needs to be there and all that.
Right.
So sweet. Well, thank you all so much for coming out. I got to go get my son to a first grade phonics class. That's what that knock was. So I will see you all when we'll throw it up on YouTube and tweet out about it and let you all know. So thank you all so much for coming out, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See ya.